We've got Mr. Mitchell on now, so let's go right into continuing talking about the Olympics with Robert Mitchell, Bob from CEO of USA Shooting. Thank you, sir, for being with us here on NRA News on Cam and Company. How are you?
Good, and glad to be here with you.
It is great to have you. So, your reaction to this story, sir, about what's going to happen here at the London Games and these tickets?
Well, it certainly is distressing because anytime we have a games or a big event where there's legislation or anti-gun movement involved, it does put a damper on things. It did in Australia in 2002 with their severe gun restrictions, and now in London we run into a situation where certainly there's an exception made for the Olympic Games, but British athletes can't train in Great Britain. You know, they've got to go to France or another area to train with small bore and high power rifles and pistols.
Go ahead, Cameron.
Bob, does it get to the point, where you're the CEO of USA Shooting, you see this? Does it get to the point where you think that, maybe not in the next Olympics, the next two Olympics, but we're at the very real fear that at one of these Olympics, one of these days, they're just going to not have shooting events anymore?
That's always a fear. It certainly is. We can go back to 1984 when the games were hosted in London, and there was certainly, in Los Angeles, California. Mm-hmm. And there was a movement at that point between Harry Usher and Peter Ubroff to not have shooting in the Olympic Games. And it took a great effort on behalf of Horst Schreiber, the Secretary General, and Olegario Vasquez-Rania, the President of the ISSF, to ensure that shooting was maintained in the Games.
Bob, we were talking earlier about this. It just makes no sense when you have outright physical combat like boxing and judo and people actually pummeling each other and literally hurting each other. When that is seen as okay for children to go see, which I'm not saying it isn't, but if that's okay to see, how could possibly the most controlled, the most regulated, the most watched, probably the safest place in the world to watch a shooting event has got to be an Olympic venue, especially with the security that's going to be around these games, considering what happened with the riots in London. I can't imagine a safer place to be than that. Well, actually, maybe an NRA convention, and that's probably the safest place to be. But the second safest place to be is going to be these shooting events there in London. And I don't understand how anyone can see this as anything that's dangerous, that any child would see this and would replicate this in a negative way.
Well, I agree with you, and it's very frustrating for us. Shooting is one of the most safest sports. I mean, our safety record is immaculate. There just aren't accidents in shooting. Shooters are responsible. We have regulations and range officers and so forth people are careful. Our sport is very, very secure. And, what I find is that the people who are lobbying so much against shooting, for the most part, are very uninformed, particularly about the sport. They get caught up in the politics of gun legislation and so forth, and do not recognize shooting as the sport for which it is. We use firearms as our sporting equipment,
right?
And it is sporting equipment. They're not weapons. And it's very frustrating for us.
Well, reading this article, my favorite quote from this article is from David Penn, who's the secretary of the British Shooting Sports Council, who I'm sure you're probably familiar with. There is no link between Olympic-level shooting and crime. It's like saying that a thief would use a Formula One car as a getaway car. I mean, Jim, that says it all.
Yeah, it does. It's amazing, and I think research has shown that where there's stronger gun legislation, it doesn't reduce crime. It's just, I just don't understand it. It's very frustrating.
Bob, talk to us. We interview here on NRA News. We've talked to a lot of Olympic shooters. We just aired something with Kim Rhodey earlier. We've talked to John Michael McGrath. Between now and the Olympics next year, we'll cover the Olympics. Definitely more than the mainstream media will. We will give Olympic shooting as much coverage as it deserves, because it does deserve a lot of coverage. But when you deal with these competitors, and really their children sometimes, do you notice what we do when it comes to their respectfulness, when it comes to their when it comes to their they're pillars of their community. They're much more patriotic. They're better students. Talk to us about what the experiences you have with these children, and with the delights that their parents have in seeing the successes that their children have.
Well, certainly through shooting, you develop a lot of life skills, and you can say that about many sports, discipline and so forth. But shooting in particular, I mean, it hones and develops the skills of concentration and commitment and various life skills. We find that shooters are very strong academically. Shooting is very mental. Certainly, many sports, you have to learn the technical aspects of the sport, but after those basics are learned and the technique is somewhat mastered, the sport really becomes mental. And we find that shooting champions and people that shoot are very astute, and also we receive comments frequently when we do sporting events and stewardship events with conservation organizations and others. Many compliments about our athletes, that they're polite, they're outgoing, they're very willing to help. That's very rewarding.
And Bob, question for you. Cameron just mentioned Kim Rohde, who is world-class Olympian, and guys like John Michael McGrath, who's an up-and-coming world-class shooter. We talked about the positives, what great people they are, and how positive it is to be involved in the shooting sports for these folks and their parents and everyone else who's around them, quite frankly. What happens on the other side? A story like this, what do you think something like this and a development like this may do to their morale and just to the center? Because they feel, once again, their sport that they love and they've given so it's part of their young lives to is being denigrated.
Well, it is, but our athletes are very focused. In shooting, the athletes are not in it for the money. They're not in it for the fame. It's not like swimming, where if you win a gold medal, it means $1 million to you and your family.
They're not. You mean they're not going to be on a Wheaties box, Bob?
No, probably not.
They should be.
They should be, of course.
They should be, and particularly Kim Rohde, when here she is going to shoot for her 5th medal in the Olympic Games, and if she should win a medal in London, and we hope that she does, she will be the first person to ever win an individual medal in 5 Olympic Games. So that's pretty outstanding, and certainly deserves some notoriety on the Wheaties box.
Bob, last question before we let you go. Talk to us just about the mechanics. What are the events in the Olympics, and what should people start looking forward to next year in London?
Sure. Certainly in the Olympic Games, we have 15 Olympic events. We've grown from, in 1980, we only had 6. So our sport has actually prospered in the modern Olympic Games. Rifle, pistol, and shotgun. Shotgun, it's trap, skeet, and double trap for men. Pistol is 50 meters and 25 meters, and then there's 10-meter air gun for both rifle and pistol. And in rifle is 10 meters and 50 meters. And it's 9 events for men, 6 events for women. We do considerable shooting in rifle and pistol at 10 meter with very sophisticated air guns, 22 caliber at 50 meters and 25 for rifle and pistol, and then certainly 12-gauge shotgun for trap, skeet, and double trap. So things are going to start to heat up this fall when we begin the Olympic team selection process. And the trials will conclude next June when we select our final Olympic team at the Rifle and Pistol National Championships.
Well, you sound justly proud of what you do there at USA Shooting, and we will do everything possible to foster the coverage and to give you the coverage you deserve, and to talk about these Olympians and get them on our shows and publicize as far and wide as we can here at NRA News.
Well, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate it. We've got a great group of kids that will represent the United States most proudly.
Bob, thanks for your good work and the great work USA Shooting does all the time. We appreciate it. We look forward to working with you in covering the Olympic Games.
Thank you, and thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob.
Bob Mitchell, CEO of USA Shooting.